What's going on, guys? Welcome to Coin Notes. I want to bring you everything happening in crypto in 5 minutes. Make it really short, quick, easy to follow. 3 things I want to talk about tonight. The first thing we're going to talk about is going to be Bitcoin price action. That's what's happening over here. We're going to be looking at which levels I think are important, the major levels that you should be focused on unless you're in the trenches day trading. Second thing I want to talk about is going to be macro, what's happening, what are alts doing relative to Bitcoin, and why that matters for your portfolio. The third thing I want to talk about is going to be a news piece that is upcoming later in the week that I think you should be aware of, and I'm going to mark that on the chart. So let's get right into it. Starting it off with Bitcoin, a little technical analysis, and really the levels that, honestly, the same levels that we were looking at last week, right, when I started this series back up. That range support on the daily and on the 4-hour, on the larger, higher time frame stuff, remains at 6K or 6,100. Right? Range resistance remains at 6,600 or 6,500. Those are the 2 prices that we've pretty much been pinballing back and forth on. If you're on Twitter, if you're trading very actively, if you're looking at all the moves, obviously there are some intra-range levels that people are picking out, whether it's 6,250 or 6,450. But honestly, if you're higher time frame, if you're more just concerned about whether a breakout happens and we can break 6,600 and possibly break out to the upside, or whether kind of downside continues and we test yearly lows, the only 2 levels that I would really be focused on a day-to-day or on a week-to-week basis are going to be 6K and 6,600, right? And those levels still remain unbreached, even with that massive drop we just had earlier today. So those are still the same levels that I'm looking at, unless, like I said, you're really active. That's all I'd be focused on as well. Second thing I want to talk about is going to be more macro. What are alts doing relative to Bitcoin? This is a topic that I like to spend a lot of time thinking about and a lot of time tweeting and kind of updating people on, because I also think it's the most interesting as well for me to study. So alts and their relationship to Bitcoin are extremely important. It's because most alts, well, all alts are priced in Bitcoin. Most alts only have liquidity in Bitcoin. Right? The only liquid or the only pair they trade against is Bitcoin. So it's important for you, if you're holding an alt, to understand what happens to that alt's price in Bitcoin when Bitcoin rises versus when Bitcoin falls. Bitcoin and alts were pretty highly correlated from February on, or from March on, really until mid-July, and then what I call the decoupling starts. All I mean by that is previously to that decoupling, when Bitcoin would rise, your alt would also rise versus Bitcoin. Meaning if you were holding an alt, let's say you're holding NEO or you're holding ETH and Bitcoin starts to rise, NEO or ETH was probably earning you more Bitcoin or appreciating faster than Bitcoin. That's as simple as I can put it. Same thing on the downside, when Bitcoin would drop, they would probably lose value faster than Bitcoin as well. They were pretty much acting as leveraged Bitcoin positions. Mid-July, that switched. Right, the decoupling started. Bitcoin kind of took off really until the beginning of August, when we got up to 8K or 8,200. And all that means is, as Bitcoin was rising, instead of alts gaining against Bitcoin, acting as leveraged Bitcoin positions, instead they were decoupled. So as Bitcoin rose, alts dropped off. So if you were heavy in alts or deep into alts, this is similar to October and November last year, as Bitcoin was rising, yes, your dollar value was going up, but you were probably losing Bitcoin value of those alt positions. As we drop back into this range, and what I've been watching now really since August 7th or August 9th, is once again alts are very highly correlated with Bitcoin's moves, meaning they're once again acting as leveraged Bitcoin positions. Why that matters to you, let's say you're deep into alts right now, or you're very underweight alts in your portfolio. As Bitcoin rises in that range, as we get closer to 6,600, we saw tons of alts. Friday and Thursday of last week, we saw a 20% pop from tons of alts as Bitcoin just moved a few percent up, 3% up. Now, as Bitcoin drops off today, it had a $100 or $200 move down. You see tons of alts fall that 5 or 7%. Right? So understanding the macro of what's driving kind of the alt valuations and whether or not they're correlated to Bitcoin, if you can understand the macro, understand if alts are going to rise with the Bitcoin or fall when Bitcoin falls, that can help you make better decisions in terms of the micro, right? If you know that being very overweight alts means that they'll appreciate as Bitcoin goes up, then, you can make that decision. You can understand what your positioning means at least. And if you can at least get that halfway right, it's going to make picking coins a lot easier. So that's kind of the macro stuff that I want to talk about. That's what I like to spend a lot of time thinking about. the last thing that I want to cover is kind of that news piece that I brought up. And this is happening on August 23rd. We have a lot of eyes, a lot of speculation about what's actually going to happen. The actual news piece that's coming out is there's a ProShares ETF scheduled to be decided upon. This isn't the ETF that everyone's focused on. This isn't the Van Eck, but it's an ETF nonetheless, similar to how there was an ETF back here at 8,200 that was denied, that the market should have known about or was expected to get denied, and whether or not that caused the sell-off or whether or not that was just a narrative they attached. It's interesting, and I know there's a lot of eyes on whether or not that's going to cause another sell-off, right? So that's a news piece that I would be focused on. That's a date that I know a lot of traders and eyes are watching as well. And those are the three things I wanted to bring to you in Coin Notes. If you like this video, let me know you're still alive. Throw a like, throw a comment, subscribe so you get updates when I go live next. Also, for the podcast listeners, I do have an interview coming out later this week. It's going to be the first interview published with Deribit Exchange after they launch their perpetual swap Bitcoin product. So for all the Bitcoin traders, should be a good one. Tune in for that one, guys. And thank you so much for watching. Earn some Bitcoin in the meantime. I'll see you guys tomorrow.